Hey, well, welcome. It's the start of week 4. It's really hard to believe that things are starting to, well, time is going so fast and we are going so slow. There's so much I want to cover in the course that I'm almost impatient. But hopefully, well, as you have seen, we've already started picking up the pace, and you should always give me feedback if you feel like the pace is, too fast, too slow. The aim is the Goldilocks aim of just right, though what counts as just right will be different for different people. So also welcome to there's some new people who've, for various registration reasons, joined late. I don't know if any of them are here today. And there are also a couple of people who wanted to um, uh, attend as guests. I don't see them here, but if they're here, then welcome. So we just, before I started recording, started talking about assignments. So I wanted to remind you that there are 2 assignments due this week. One is this one. So they are on Moodle. This assignment is due midnight tonight. There's no restrictions. You can write it by hand or you can type it. Do convert it into a PDF and upload.
I have uploaded in Word document.
Yeah, well, ideally I'd prefer PDF. I had actually changed the settings to disallow Word, so I'm not sure why that happened. It's just that the plugin for Word doesn't seem to work in Moodle, but it's fine. If you've already submitted, don't worry about it.
I think sir ये Turnitin है ना, ये Word के लिए ज़्यादा इजी से वर्क करता है, because इसमें words counting भी होती है.
हाँ, but anyway, I don't need to. I'm not using Turnitin. So if you've already submitted, like I said, then don't worry about it. If you haven't submitted, submit in PDF if possible.
Sir, I can resubmit now.
You can resubmit also if you want. So identify the emotive words used in this passage, replace them with emotively neutral words. How does the sense of the passage change the result? And your second question is here. This has to do with when this is due on Saturday midnight. This has to do with the material and definitions that we are looking at now. My general philosophy is always it's totally fine for you to talk to your friends in a general kind of sense as to what the answers are. But your answers, first of all, should mention that you've discussed with your friends, and secondly, that your written work must be your own. So if I find that there's copying between people, then I just assign both people 0 and it's end of story. So that's the first announcement. Any questions about the assignments? And again, I would stress that people who do well in the course, at least as far as grades are concerned, do well because they're consistently submitting this stuff. You will get a chance to make up if you can't do a good job on this assignment, but I would say don't ignore these. So my plan for today, now moving on to the substance of the lecture, is 2 things. One is to wrap up one last aspect of definitions that we didn't cover from the early readings, the notion of a persuasive definition, and then to begin the discussion on different kinds of reasons, which I put up on this handout that I had assigned for class last week and also for class today. For class today, I had also assigned another reading from this textbook on public reasoning. And what we'll do is we'll read this for tomorrow. The textbook is already up on Piazza, We'll do this for Thursday. Now, Thursday we'll likely have a guest lecture by somebody who works in advertising, and I asked him to talk about how advertisers use emotive meaning and use emotions. And so this material from the APU text would be helpful in that connection. And I might assign you a couple of more things to read before that. One last announcement, I guess, is with respect to tutorials. So last week, at least A and B had quite, that's the Tuesday and Wednesday slots had quite a poor turnout, and then the C Friday tutorial had a very high turnout, which is fine. My suggestion is if some people can migrate from the Friday to either or both the Tuesday and Wednesday, that'll be nice, just because I think the optimal size of a tutorial is probably like 7
Yes,
to
sir.
9 people.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So
I can
ठीक है,
migrate from Friday to Wednesday.
ठीक
Sir,
है. So
but
that'll be great.
this Wednesday is a holiday.
This Wednesday is a holiday. So, but Saturday is a Wednesday timetable. So,
Okay.
I can tutorial will be on Saturday.
Friday to Tuesday.
ठीक है. So great. So to the, like you said, like I said, you can just play around with what is convenient in a particular week. But my ideal scenario would be where there are like maybe 7 to 10 people in each tutorial. That makes for a nice, intense discussion. And in this week's tutorial, also I have assigned on Piazza. We're continuing this material on propaganda. I've given you 2 or 3 different kinds of readings. If you only have time for one thing, then take a look at this film. It's about a 40-minute film that's kind of this background to the Nazi genocide. If you have time for 2 things, then take a look at these 2 examples of print media and genocide. And if you have time for 3, then take a look at this. This really fun short paper, student paper that looks at Nazi propaganda, at least through posters. Okay, so moving on from tutorials to today's class. Last week we looked at 4 kinds of definitions, and this was material in the Hurley reading. We looked at stipulative and lexical, precising, and theoretical definitions. Remember, we ended class with the discussion of Alan Turing and the definition of thinking. And I said, look, that's when one is engaged in definitions of that kind, one is offering theoretical definitions. And you could see that even that very brief glimpse of the conversation we had pointed to how rich that kind of exercise could be. And really the one aspect of really doing philosophy in the tradition that I'm part of is providing things like theoretical definitions of notions like thinking. And but for the purposes of this course, a course on critical thinking, that's not going to be that important. And for the purposes of like a toolkit on critical thinking, as far as definitions are concerned, the most important is the notion of a precising definition and how to use precising definitions in order to advance argument and conversation. The last kind of definition, and then the distinction between these different definitions, I think itself could be of use. So you can see in an argument that somebody's making, if the issue of what a word means comes up, in what way does it come up? And that's why this classification, I think, can be helpful. And really, the take-home point in all of these cases is, as critical thinkers, we're on the lookout. We're wary of anything that prevents us from thinking. Sometimes the use of emotively charged language might be one way of doing this. Another way of doing this might be this device of the persuasive definition. And once again, I'm going to ask somebody to read out this passage, and to the extent possible, if somebody has, okay, well, Unnati, you've already read. There's a, so if there's somebody who's not read so far in the class, then I prefer that they volunteer. And if they don't, then I remember that Hemant had volunteered last class, so we'll do Hemant and then Unnati will be our cue. But anyone? It's a large 26 people in the call. I'm sure that not all 26 of you have read so far. It's not that hard. Okay, in that case, we'll go with Hemant if you're ready.
The purpose of a persuasive definition is to engender a favorable or unfavorable attitude towards what is denoted by the defendium. This purpose is accomplished by assigning an emotionally charged or value-laden meaning to a word while making it appear that the word really has or ought to have that meaning in the language in which it is used. Thus, persuasive definitions amount to a certain synthesis of stipulative, lexical, and possibly theoretical definitions backed by the theoretical motive to engender a certain attitude. As a result of this synthesis, a persuasive definition masquerades as an honest assignment of meaning to a term while condemning or blessing with approval the subject matter of the defendum. Here
Okay,
are
just
some
pause there.
examples of opposite.
Just pause there, Hemant. So this is written in more complicated language than it needs to be. But the basic thought is, um, you're giving a persuasive definition when your definition of that term builds in um, some kind of negative or positive connotation, and then when it builds it in a way that again prevents people from um, uh, critically analyzing whether that thing is good or bad. Um, the example that, well, and in persuasive definitions, you can, as Hurley says, the aim of a persuasive definition is to engender a certain attitude, get the listener or the reader to feel a certain way about, or to have a certain evaluation about whatever the topic is, and again to do that in a way that bypasses their critical faculties. So if you look at the first example, if I say abortion means the ruthless murdering of innocent children, suppose I'm arguing in a court or in parliament saying we should ban abortion, and I say, look, abortion by definition is the ruthless murdering of innocent children. Well, if that really is what abortion, if that's a correct definition of abortion, then it seems very straightforward to say, of course, we should ban abortion because this is what abortion is. But the real action that this is covering up is a debate about, well, whether abortion really is, whether it amounts to murder in the first place, whether when you have an abortion, you're killing a child, or is it a bunch of cells? So the point of the persuasive definition is to stop you asking the questions that really matter when you're discussing what that issue is, and take it to be settled as a matter of definition. Um, the the examples that Hurley gives aren't, didn't strike me as being particularly helpful or nice. And I was thinking in the context of, let's say, our Nazi propaganda. If Hitler or Goebbels or somebody says, Jews are by definition an unscrupulous race, and therefore, Germans of Aryan descent are not permitted to marry um, Jews. Then looks like, look, well, if in fact Jews are an unscrupulous race, then maybe there's some reason to sign on to the so-called Nuremberg laws. But that's a sleight of hand. That's building into the definition something that is actually a contested, surely false sort of claim. Does that make sense? So it's a little bit like in the case of if you go back to Lakoff and framing, sometimes when you're faced with something like a frame, are you for tax relief or against tax relief? The thing to do is not to answer within the terms that is set by the frame, because then you're buying into these connotations that the frame is giving you, but to push back on the use of that particular frame itself. And you remember that exercise when he does that with homosexual marriage versus civil unions. So in the same way, when you're faced with a persuasive definition, the thing to do is to push back and think, look, is this really the right way of defining this? Or by defining things in this way, am I automatically signing up for certain associations which in fact have no bearing in reality? Any questions on that front? We'll see that persuasive definitions get used in certain kinds of debating and argumentative tactics that we'll see there. The one I have in mind, which may be familiar to somebody, is what's called the straw man fallacy. I'll just type it out. Okay, so if there are no questions, then I'm going to move from the subject of definitions to the subject of reasons, which will occupy us for roughly, I think, the next 3 weeks. Reasons in the context of arguments. So far we've been looking at kind of individual units of language, right? Like a single sentence, or how particular words have particular associations. But the reason we're looking at these is because people use these words and these sentences to make claims about the world and to argue for policies, for how we should think about things, for what's true, what's false. And the essence of critical thinking is to be able to evaluate these arguments, to correct for errors of reasoning that one might have committed in making these arguments. So reasoning are, I would say, let's go type it out. Reasoning, evidence. These are kind of the core elements of any kind of critical thinking program. And what I'm offering in this handout, which I prepared for class last semester, is a kind of really precising definitions, because the term reasons is ambiguous. It's helpful to make there are important distinctions to be made within the space of reasons, and those are the two sets of distinctions that I am particularly interested in. And the first set, as your handout displays, is this distinction, the distinction between causal explanatory reasons and justifying reasons. Paste this into chat as well. And I'll make that distinction, and for our purposes in a critical thinking course, we are concerned with this notion of justifying reason. And the other distinction is within the class of justifying reasons. Let's say B1 epistemic reasons versus two non this is of really less relevance to our course. We'll see some use of this distinction, and our main interest in the course is in the notion of an epistemic reason, which is a kind of justifying reason. Okay, so what's the first distinction? I'm turning to the handout. In that, why didn't I ask Unnati to read out this section on causal explanatory reasons? And you can skip the examples for now. We can just go straight from this paragraph to this paragraph.
Okay, sir. So, casual explanatory reasons involve an answer to a why question. The answer one gives to such a question is typically an explanation. Sometimes an explanation involves citing a cause. I directly jump to the next paragraph, sir.
Actually, no. You can just carry. Let's carry on. Let's do the whole thing, whole sequence.
Okay. We can ask a why question of beliefs. The question: why does he believe in God? He believes in God because he grew up in a religious household. Actions: why did she accept the job? She accepted the job because she needed the money. And state of affairs: why did the river flood? The river flooded because the dam burst.
So just
When
pause
one
there.
gives
So
a casual explanation.
just hang up. Pause there, Amity. So it's not casual. It's causal.
Oh, sorry, causal.
So causal explanatory reasons are just the kinds of reasons that you find yourself looking for in the context of science, for instance, science or social science. Why is the poverty rate going on? What is the explanation for going up? What is the explanation for why the poverty rate has gone up, or why? What's the current affairs? Why has Virat Kohli resigned from the Test captaincy? There's some answer to this that tells you about what reasons he has or what are the conditions under which he made this decision. It's a kind of a factual question about the world. That's the domain of causal explanatory reasons. And as you can see, they apply to a bunch of different sorts of issues. Carry on, Unnati.
When one gives a causal explanatory reason for why someone believes X, one need not to be passing a value judgment on X. The explanation for why X believes in God is the same, whether or not one thinks it is a good thing that X believes in God. We can,
just
however,
pause there again.
make judgments.
So you can see how there's a kind of neutrality, right? In science, if you asked for somebody to explain the science of an atom bomb. How is it that when there's an atom bomb explosion, it leads to the deaths of many people? That explanation is going to be neutral with respect to whether it's a good or a bad thing for that explosion to take place or for those people to die. Right? So if you think of like the evil scientist or the one of these James Bond what are they called supervillain type people, like both the supervillain and the hero, one, the supervillain may think it's a great thing that the atom bomb kills so many people, and the hero might think it's a terrible thing that the atom bomb kills so many people, but they'll essentially have the same causal explanatory reason for the mechanism by which it does so. That's the point being made here. Yeah, carry on.
We can, however, make judgments about how good a particular explanation is. Compare, she accepted the job because she needed the money, and she accepted the job because she wanted to move to a new city. Depending on the actual facts of the situation, one of these explanations may be correct and the other incorrect. Just because I give a causal explanatory reason for X doesn't mean that it is a good reason.
Right. So again,
This
think
is a
about
person
science
critic.
and hang on, sorry. If you think about science or journalism or whatever, we're offering causal and explanatory reasons for various phenomena or for people's beliefs, and sometimes those will be correct, and sometimes that's not the reason why that person believed something or why that thing happened. So they can be assessed on a dimension of correct or incorrect, good or bad. And again, in the domain of science, you want correct explanations rather than incorrect explanations. And since we are in a course on critical thinking, we are going to be interested in um, what beliefs have um, what to the extent we care about causal explanatory reasons, we'll be interested in their reasons for um, the mechanism by which that person has come to believe X. Any questions or just on this notion, the notion of a causal explanatory reason? No? Okay, so then let's move on to the other notion, the notion of a justifying reason, which, as I said, is um, more important for our purposes. Why don't we get somebody else to read? And again, my preference is for somebody who's not read before. And maybe what I'll do is just, if I don't get a volunteer, I'll just call somebody out. Anyone who's not read before?
Yes, sir.
Gaurav. Okay, we'll go with Gaurav. So here's the section on justifying reasons.
When we are talking about justifying reasons, we are restricting ourselves to questions about human agents. Action. Is X justified in doing A? Example, was Godse justifying in killing Gandhi? Belief. Is X justified in believing A? Example, is Trump justified in believing that he won the election? Questions of the first kind are in the domain of moral philosophy. Questions of the second kind are in the domain of a subject called epistemology. Critical thinking is a branch of applied epistemology.
Okay, so just pause there for a second. So you see, look, sometimes you can ask reasons that involve, when you ask reasons for why people did something, when you ask them justifying reasons, those are reasons that are relevant to your assessment of that person's character or something like that. That's in the domain of moral philosophy. But again, for us, we are not interested in the question. We're not actually. I should take that back. we are not immediately, at least, interested in the question of people's moral character, or did they do the right thing or the wrong thing. We are interested in people's beliefs and whether they are believing things for good reasons or bad reasons. And that question, what reasons we have to believe things, are the subject of this branch of philosophy called epistemology. And epistemology is sometimes referred to as the theory of knowledge. It's a Greek word where I think episteme means connected to knowledge. And what we're doing is finding ways to be better thinkers, better knowers. So this is the domain in which we are um, acting. Okay, carry on, Gaurav.
Our concern, as before, is with the justification of belief. When we offer a justifying reason for believing X, we are saying there are good reasons for thinking that X is true. We have good evidence that X is true. We are offering a kind of justification or backing for thinking that X is true. In evaluating an argument, we have to perform two steps. First, identify the justifying reasons which are given to support the conclusion, and evaluate whether those justifying reasons are good reasons to accept the conclusion.
Okay, so just pause there. Um, these two steps are the two steps that we'll be undertaking for the next couple of weeks, and we'll be doing that in the light of the material by the Azim Premji University, this textbook they've authored on Padde reasoning. So carry on.
Just because one has offered a justifying reason for X does not mean we are actually justified in believing X. The justifying reason may not be a good reason. I believe that the stock market will go up because my horoscope for this month says I will make a lot of money. I believe that Trump won the elections because everyone on my Facebook feed thinks so.
Okay, so pause
Sometimes,
there. Do you guys see why these might be bad reasons to believe the propositions in question?
yes, sir, because they are just some reasons which do not make any sense, unscientific and sort of like
I mean,
not
they're not
logical reasons.
nonsensical. They're not. I can make the sense that my horoscope this month says I'll make a lot of money. It's not nonsense.
I mean, there is faulty implications.
What's the faulty implication?
Like, just because it says that for this month I'll make a lot of money, that does not necessarily mean that. I mean, first of all, it does not have to be true because horoscope, and even assuming that if, like, let's say you believe that it is going to be true, it does not have to be from a stock market. Like, there might be other sources of income. Yeah, I mean,
Sure,
okay.
Fair enough. So
Sir,
first of all, yeah,
but
go
the
ahead.
first reason is like more like more justified, that horoscopes don't need to be true.
That's it. The fact that the horoscope says something, unless you believe in astrology, and I imagine there are many people who do believe in astrology, which is why horoscopes are popular. You know, you might argue that in fact it's not a good reason to. The fact that a horoscope says you'll make a lot of money is not a good reason for thinking that you will actually make a lot of money. And that may be the primary reason why you think, look, that's a bad reason for believing that the stock market will go up.
So,
Somebody else wanted to say something.
yes, sir. Why is that a bad reason? Maybe it's a bad reason for us because we don't believe in horoscope that much. But if someone does, I am not saying that it will come true. It might not. But if someone, the question is about believing. If someone believes in that, how is that how is that good or bad? He just believes in it.
And it may give them a lot of comfort or something. Maybe is that your thought? Look, believing this may give you some relief or may give you some comfort.
Yeah, for whatever reasons he believes, he just believes in it. Why does it have to be a good or bad thing? Uh, like the reason, why does it have to be a good reason or bad reason to believe in something?
Well, let me throw this open to uh, the rest of you guys.
I guess that is subjective. Like, uh, I might think that me doing something, I have a good reason for doing something, but in the eyes of others, my reason might not be good enough. Like in the eyes of
Yeah.
others, it might be a bad reason. So it's subjective.
So why is just because it's subjective? Why does it mean it's a bad reason?
Yes, that
Mm,
what.
That was Piyush's question, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Aditya has his hand up.
I think it's a bad reason because because it's not true. Like you can basically we can, for example, if we take all the time, the horoscope will say that they will make you will make a lot of money, but the stock market will not go up every time. The stock market will not depend on what the horoscope says.
Yeah, it
There will
will
be no
not
statistical
depend per
correlation
se
between them.
on the but if it does goes up, then what? Like
If
it
it does
sometimes
go
it
up,
will go up,
then
sometimes
it's a
it
good.
won't. Yeah.
If every
That,
time the horoscope says that the stock market will go up and then the stock market does go up, then the horoscope is a good reason to believe that the stock market will go up.
yeah, I'm not talking about the consequence here that the stock market will go up. It's just that he believes.
No, no,
The question is about his belief. That
no.
is it? Does his belief have
The
a good
question is
reason or
about
not?
whether it is a good reason or not a good reason.
Yeah,
The good
good
reason,
reason or not a good reason
huh?
to believe.
No, no, good reason. The way the question is defining good reason is by saying that if it is a consequence, then it is a good reason. If if it is written in the horoscope that the stock market will goes up, and if this event causes the stock market to goes up, then the horoscope is a good reason to believe that the stock market will go up. If this does not cause the stock market to go up, then it's not a good reason to believe that the stock market will go up.
If the consequence decides if it is good or not, then how can uh, the consequences always come later on? So how can we decide now that it's good or
Because you
not?
can check, because you can see, like, you will take the horoscope from 10 years back and you will see, does the horoscope tell you, does whenever the horoscope says that the stock market is going to go up, does the stock
Yeah,
market
but
actually go up?
Okay, I'm gonna pause the exchange for 1 second, um, because and Hemant, I'll come back to you in a bit. I think what Piyush and Aditya are disagreeing about is actually connected to the next topic that um, uh, is on our agenda for today. So let's just move on to that and come back to the rest of this and see if this helps resolve the dispute.
Okay.
Let's just go on to this distinction, the distinction between um, epistemic versus non-epistemic reasons. And maybe the simplest example, I don't have a stock market example here, but rather than type out a stock market example, look at C1 and C2. And why don't we have somebody, not Piyush, since this is a question that's come up for you, why don't you read these out, C1 and C2?
yes, sir. C1. I believe that Trump lost the election because the Supreme Court did not find any evidence of electoral fraud. Versus C2. I believe that Trump lost the election because my because my wife will divorce me if I was to believe that he won the election.
So can you see a parallel between um, the second kind of case? You might also ask yourself, look, it's a perfectly it's a good reason for me to believe in this because it's going to have these bad consequences. If I don't have this belief, it will have bad consequences. So in that sense, there's a particular sense in which even though I'm believing something where, the fact that my wife is going to divorce me, that doesn't have anything to do with the truth of this question, right? Whether Trump or not, whether Trump lost the election or not, that's just an objective fact about the number of votes that were cast, and that's got nothing to do with whether my wife will or will not divorce me. And maybe there's good evidence, if I think the Supreme Court is a good institution and that it will have considered the matter impartially, etc., etc. When the Supreme Court says there's no evidence of electoral fraud, that gives me some kind of reason to think that, or some evidence that maybe Trump actually did lose the election.
So, sir, when we decide these good or bad reason, like when we judge them, so do we keep should we keep ourselves in the shoes of the person who is like believing this, or should we like even forget our own beliefs and be like an outsider to all this, like see it from an outside perspective?
Okay, also a very good question and connects to what I think Sumedha was saying to you. But let me just bring it to your initial issue. So the point, the distinction I want to draw is between this kind of case, the C2 case. In the C2 case, we might say, look, it's a perfectly, there's a sense in which this is a good reason to have this belief. Like something very bad is going to happen to you if you don't have the belief, and therefore you should have the belief. But the reason in question is not a reason to believe that the thing is true. And we call this kind of thing a non-epistemic reason. Whereas an epistemic reason is a reason to believe, or a reason which gives one evidence of the truth of a claim. So if I can, and I don't know whether Aditya would agree with this, but one way of seeing the distinction, the difference between Piyush on the one hand and Aditya and Sumedha on the other is Piyush might be saying, hey, I agree that the fact that my horoscope says this is not a good epistemic reason for believing that the stock market will go up, because there's no, there's no causal connection between what my horoscope says and what's going to happen to the stock market. But it may be a perfectly, satisfying belief to have. It may give me lots of comfort. And what's wrong with that? And let me give you one more example. Let's take the first of these examples. Piyush, why don't you read these?
Yes, sir. A1. I believe that I will recover from COVID because all my symptoms are improving. Versus A2. I believe that I will recover from COVID because that belief will cheer me up.
Okay, so just pause there. So can you see again that the second belief,
yes, sir,
maybe a perfectly legitimate reason to believe this thing, but may have nothing to do with the fact that what your medical prognosis actually is.
Yes, sir.
So again, I would categorize that in the basket of a non-epistemic reason, and the point of saying that justifying reasons may not be good reasons. This is true in the domain of epistemic reasons. These examples. So I'll put it another way. When I say I believe that the stock market will go up because my horoscope for this month says that I will make a lot of money, what I should actually be saying is this is not a good epistemic reason. The fact that my horoscope says I'll make a lot of money is not a good epistemic reason to believe that the stock market will go up. So would you agree with that claim?
Uh, yes, sir. Actually, I can't totally understand the definition of epistemic. But yeah, I get the point a little.
An epistemic reason is a reason to believe that something is true, whereas a non-epistemic reason is a reason in favor of believing something that doesn't have to do with the truth of that proposition, but it has to do with some other consequence. Like it'll make me feel better or it'll please my parents, something like that.
Yeah,
Sir, I
that's
have like
not
So hang
good.
on. So there's a hang on.
Sir,
Piyush, Hemant, and then I think it was either Sumedha or Unnati. I can't remember who spoke. Okay, so
Sumedha.
Sumedha. Okay, so Piyush, go ahead, say what you want, and then Hemant.
Yes, sir. In that case, I agree that it is not a good epistemic reason. That would be a perfect way to say it.
Okay, so yeah, so that's the reason this distinction between epistemic and non-epistemic is a useful distinction to have. But Hemant?
sir, I was just asking that if I make a lot of money in a particular month, then and also stock market is not going up, then will I believe in horoscope, or should I believe in horoscope? Because
I
I
guess
can
so,
make
right?
money from.
I guess the horoscope prediction would still be correct, right?
Yeah, horoscope predictions is correct, but that doesn't mean that we should believe in horoscope.
Well, we'll come to this. In fact, the status of astrology we'll see in a few weeks' time. Sumedha, you had a question.
Yes, regarding this sentence that I believe that stock market will go up because my horoscope for this month say that I'll make a lot of money. If I'm to reframe it in logical terms, using implications. So, I'm just it's kind of like P implies Q, and the P statement is that my horoscope for this month says that I'll make a lot of money, and the implication is that stock market will go up. But in mathematical terms, if P is false, like if my premise is that I am basing the implication on is false, then the whole statement becomes true. Like if then implication, that kind of thing.
Okay. So
I mean, in this sentence, because my horoscope for this month says that I'll make a lot of money. Can we say that it is not a good reason? Because the reason that is given for the statement, like the belief, is itself questionable. Like, why do you believe that the horoscope for this month will say that? How can you say that it will be true? Like, the truth of the reason is not really known.
it sounds to me like what you're asking is, Aditya, why don't you jump in?
So it's a person's choice to
presumably,
believe
Hang
in
on,
horoscope or
Hemant,
not.
let's do hands because multiple people are talking. So Aditya and then Hemant.
presumably if somebody is saying this, they have already checked their horoscope either with some person who takes out horoscopes or in the newspaper or something. Like that's what I read from this statement. Like they have already checked the horoscope, and the horoscope is saying that they will make a lot of money, and then they're taking an implication that the stock market will go up because they have presumably invested in the stock market.
Yeah, that much is fine. But what I'm saying is, do they have valid reasons to believe in that horoscope being true?
No, that is a different thing. That the horoscope is like, what do you mean by the horoscope is true? Like the horoscope is saying that they will make a lot of money, but they might not make a lot of money. But we do have valid reasons to believe that the horoscope is saying that.
Yeah, horoscope is saying that that is okay, but is that the truth? Does the person has a past experience of like that whatever my horoscope says that actually happens or something like that. Like that kind of reason to believe in horoscope.
Right. So let's okay. Let's get Hemant in, and then I want to jump in, and Piyush will come back to you.
Yes, sir. I was just
Yeah.
saying that believing in horoscope is a personal choice. No, we can believe in horoscope or we can't. It's our personal choice. So it may be a questionable situation that we should believe in or not, but that's a personal choice.
So this goes back, I think, to two things that Piyush said. One of the things, and it's important, from our perspective, the issue is not to judge a person's character or to say they're a bad person, etc., for having or not having particular beliefs. The issue is to say um, which of the beliefs that we have or that other people have are backed by reasons to think that the belief is true. So it's a very narrow dimension of an epistemic reason. So as critical thinkers, we are interested in um, the question of well, whether we have, and so the term good may lend a kind of moralistic air to what we're doing, but it doesn't have to. I mean, the thing that we're interested in is this kind of technical issue. Is this a reason to believe that um, my belief is true? Does the fact, let's take for granted for the purposes for our as a hypothesis, my horoscope does actually say that I will make a lot of money, and on the basis of that belief, I now form another belief. The stock market will go up. And then the issue is what kind of justification is provided for the belief that I will make a lot of, that the stock market will go up, by the belief that my horoscope says I'll make a lot of money. So it's a relationship between these two beliefs, and the question um, is the relationship one of epistemic justification? That's the question that we're interested in primarily as critical thinkers. And the assumption, and this goes to the other thing that Piyush said, he said, look, are we interested in kind of from our own perspective, or are we looking at things from the outside, from the perspective of somebody else? And I would say that for our purposes, we're assuming that there are better and worse ways of getting at the truth or getting things right. And so we might well, and this goes back to that Elliot Cohen reading when he says critical thinking is self-reflective. So we get into this picture by by reflecting on our own practices and our own beliefs and think, look, sure, I believe this, but is my belief really justified? I believe that I don't know. Somebody said, I believe that joining IIT will really uh, make my life very happy. And somebody might say, look, that's crazy. Like most people who go to IIT are really miserable. So you don't have, that's not a reasonable thing to believe. So in the context of a disagreement, you might think, look, some people say this, some people say the opposite. What really should I believe? What is actually truth? So if I'm a thinker, seeking after the truth or seeking after some approximation of the truth, then I'm in the game of essentially seeking to have my beliefs be epistemically justified rather than not. That's the zone that we're in, which is not to say, so in a way we're not passing judgment necessarily on people who have beliefs because they think, look, this is what makes me happy, this is what makes me comfortable. I say, look, yeah, that's fine. That may make you comfortable or happy, but whatever else it's doing it's not making it more likely to be true. What I'm going to do is let's take a 4-minute or 5-minute pause and think about these issues a little bit more. They're actually really interesting, deep philosophical issues, and they're fun to talk about. But the yeah, so let's do that. Let's. It's now by my clock 6:01. So let's reconvene, so to speak, at 6:05, and then we'll have Aditya and then Piyush, and then anyone else who wants to talk, and then I'll wrap up. Yeah. So 6:05, or let's say 6:06, we'll start. Okay, I am back. So Aditya and Piyush both had things to say.
So, not really. Like you mostly said all that I was thinking of saying.
Okay.
Like I was just talking about the difference between true and good, and I was thinking that true is a better word to use here than good, because good has many implications which are not very good here.
That's a good has its model implications. Sorry, my son has stolen my headphones. Hopefully he'll give them back to me. He thinks of the headphones sometimes as a stethoscope, so then he goes and pokes people and thinks he's checking their heartbeat.
Yes,
Except that he pokes their knees because he's short. Anyway, that's right. So maybe we should go for something like truth or falsity, because it doesn't carry the same kind of model content. That's a Yeah.
Yes, sir. That's it.
Piyush.
Yes, sir. So the point you said about these being two beliefs, that the belief that stock market will go up and the belief that he believes in his horoscope,
Yeah.
and the relation between these beliefs, so that point made me understand a bit more about what this justifying reason was about. That justifying reason may not be a good reason.
Or at least it doesn't provide a justification.
Yeah.
Right? So here's another way of putting it. Let me type this out. So let's suppose X is the claim. My horoscope says I will make a lot of money. Let Y be the claim. The stock market question to ask is, does X provide a justifying reason and the thought is no, it doesn't, because there's no real connection between X and Y. At least unless you believe in astrology. See, if you believe in astrology and you think, look, X does provide a justifying reason for Y. And then the debate between someone who thinks that I should rephrase this. Time should actually be, does X provide a good justifying reason for Y? The debate between people who answer yes to this question and people who answer no to this question is going to be a debate about whether whether astrology is correct or not. And presumably, that's an objective fact about the world. Astrology might in fact be correct about the world, in which case astrology skeptics like me and maybe Sumedha and Aditya are going to be wrong, or maybe astrology doesn't describe the world properly, in which case the believers in astrology might be getting things wrong. But that's the kind of debate that I had in mind. Sumedha.
So what I wanted to reconfirm this, that in the same way that his belief in this statement that stock market will go up is questionable, like he has to provide a reason for it. Like in that same manner, the belief in the truth of astrology or the truth of horoscope should be backed up by a reason in believing so, right?
Yeah.
We are skeptical about it because we don't have a reason to believe in astrology, like as per our knowledge.
That's it. So to the extent that we are skeptical about whether X provides evidence for Y, that skepticism is arising from a skepticism about astrology.
Yeah, because we don't have a justifying reason or the true reason to believe in it.
That's right. Of course, we could be wrong, right? It may turn out that in fact astrology is correct.
But we just don't have a reason. Like in that statement, the stock market might go up, but we don't have a reason to believe in so.
Yeah.
I wanted to confirm this, that epistemic truths and reasons, justifications. Okay, epistemic justifications are ultimately recursively, if we think about that, they are ultimately backed by evidence.
Yeah.
If something is based on belief of something, that you need to have evidence for that belief.
Yeah.
And if at a certain point you cannot justify a certain belief, then that is a non-epistemic like justification.
Well, it's about the nature of the justification. I mean, this is going into very deep philosophical waters. And what I might do is just give you some references to follow up. But part of what you're saying is there a kind of regress that in order to believe X, I have to have justification for Y. Well, what's my justification for
Yes.
Y?
Yeah, that's what
I have to
I'm
find something like
asking.
Z, and then this goes all the way down.
Yeah.
And is that that's what you're after?
Yeah, that's
So
what I'm
there's
asking.
the theory that says that's the way things are is a theory called epistemic foundationalism. And the most famous proponent of this theory is a man whose name will be familiar, uh, Rene Descartes. It's a huge philosophical debate, and a very interesting one. But it's sort of not so relevant to the course. People who don't believe in this foundationalism, where there's this kind of possibly infinite regress, they are sometimes called coherentists. So I'm just going to close the door because I don't have a video. I can't headphones. I can't shut off the. Okay, I'm back. By the way, the thing that and Hemant and Piyush, I'll come back to you. The place this is really and historically also has been quite interesting is in the context of believing in the existence of God. And we'll see a reading for next week in the tutorials will be on this question. So think about this example. Where is it gone? Okay, Hemant, why don't you read this one out? This pair.
Okay, sir. I believe that God exists because there is no other way to explain why I have had so much good fortune in my life. Versus, I believe that God exists because it is a good insurance policy. If God doesn't exist, and I believe that He does exist, all I have is a false belief. But if I believe that God doesn't exist, but God does exist, then I am going to go to hell. So it makes sense to believe that God exists.
So this is called, and this may be familiar to some of you guys.
Yes.
It's called Pascal's wager, and it's after the mathematician, inventor of probability, Blaise Pascal. You can see the same kind of distinction there, right? The distinction between um, positing the existence of God as a kind of explanation for why this phenomenon occurs, why I've been so lucky, versus saying that there's a good non-epistemic reason for believing in the existence of God, because if I'm wrong, if I'm wrong, there's not much that I have not suffered from having a false belief. Whereas if I'm correct, I have really escaped like a terrible fate. In the I mean, this has happened in many countries at many times, but in the 19th century, in England, especially after Darwin's publication of The Origin of the Species, many people sort of, their confidence in the existence of God was sort of shaken because they thought that it's the God's existence, is needed to explain um, the way the world is. Um, and now we have this alternative explanation. So should we believe in God at all? And there were people who said, yeah, it's still fine to, believing in God is a good thing. It involves, community solidarity. It makes it easier to bear the hardships of life, and therefore we should continue to believe in God, even though um, there are now no longer any justifying reasons, any good justifying reasons for believing in uh, God's existence. Um, and we'll see that debate, one example of that debate, in fact, from another mathematician next week. Okay, so Hemant, and then I'm going to give the last word to Piyush and we'll close.
Yes, sir. I had a question that if I believe in astrology, then whatever I am thinking that my horoscope is saying that I will make a lot of money. Then what's wrong in it? It's true now because I have a faith in astrology. What's problem in it?
Okay,
It's a justifying reason.
but is it a good justifying reason? I mean, it may turn out to be quite false, right? Like, suppose I believe I'll make a lot of money, but I don't make a lot of money.
But if what if I may make a lot of money?
Well, then I'm lucky, and there's nothing wrong with it. So again, it's not a moral. The issue for us is not the moral question of whether um, you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing, but you may end up losing a lot of money, right? If you say, look, I'm going to invest in this risky venture and it's going to turn out to be okay because my horoscope said this. Again, it's a complicated. Yeah, go ahead.
Sir, if this trend is happening in my life again and again, then I will have a faith.
That's right. Again, we'll like I said, we'll look at the case of astrology in a bit more detail. Um, but you could say two things, one of two things in this kind of case. You could say either, hey, Hemant has just got lucky. He's believing things for the wrong reasons, or he doesn't have good justifying reasons for believing this. But um, yeah, but he lucked out. Or we could say Hemant has shown that in fact astrological reasons are good justifying reasons for belief. And which of those things we accept, well, that'll depend upon doing more investigation into the nature of astrology itself. But again, it's a fascinating, interesting question. So we're just skimming the surface right now. Piyush.
Sir, like there are other things as well. Like if we say that we believe in mantra meditation, because
Yeah,
uh, from mantra meditation we can concentrate more on our present life. So it's true or what?
so let's come back to that. That's a kind of a slightly different question, but uh, we'll come back to that. Maybe in a couple of weeks' time we'll see um, examples of this kind.
Okay, sir.
I'm glad that you guys are coming up with these thoughts. Piyush.
Yeah, sir. This is the like just wanted to say that like we are saying that why does he has a reason to believe in like horoscope or something? So a person can also ask that why does someone has a reason not to believe in it? So beliefs are quite questionable like because it's in its definition that accepting something that's true without proof.
Yeah,
But if someone thinks of beliefs as holding an opinion, then they are questionable. So again, it comes to which definition are we thinking of when we say belief?
I'm not seeing the distinction. So just what are the two definitions of belief?
So one definition may be that accepting something
Hmm.
without proof, accepting something that it is true without
Okay.
having any proof.
Okay.
And one belief maybe that just holding an opinion. You can question opinion and it can be wrong. But
Okay.
if you are accepting something that is true without
Hmm.
any proof, you can't question it. The person is accepting in itself. You
Okay.
can question him, but for him it's true.
Okay.
So that can't be questioned, but an opinion can be. So what like if a person is saying that I don't believe in God,
Yeah.
So that might be his opinion. So we can question it. That we can ask him, argue about him, argue him that why don't you or why do you? But
Okay.
he has accepted that God exists and he doesn't care about the proof. So we can't question it. Even if we do, he may not have any reason, but he still does believe.
Okay.
So nothing's wrong with that too. We all do. So depends which definition are we thinking of when we say the word belief, when we use it.
So I think it's not. I think I see what you're saying. Not everyone who holds beliefs cares about whether they hold beliefs, whether they have good justifying reasons for believing, for holding those beliefs.
Yes, sir.
And it might be that it may be futile to try and convince somebody out of those beliefs.
Yes, sir.
Um, all that's true. So in a way, I'm not. Well, it's a complicated thing, and I think in the course there's some push towards saying, in general, we should have good justifying reasons for holding the beliefs that we do, because um,
We are critical thinkers.
I mean, as I think part of what you're pushing back upon is, look, why believe that? Like, why be a critical thinker? What's the value in that? And that's fair enough. It's not an easy question to answer. Why should you be a critical thinker? You've seen some reasons why in that first set of readings on epistemic well-being and by Elliot Cohen. So suppose somebody says, yeah, so it's again points to some deep and interesting thoughts, which we'll see maybe in a couple of weeks. And it's not as though there's a clear answer. If somebody challenged me, why are you teaching this course? What is so important about critical thinking? I'm not sure I have a very good answer to it, except these more instrumental things. Look, you're more likely to not be manipulated. You're more likely to understand the world better, and so far, and so forth. Okay, I'm going to, now we're running out of time. Since Ratnesh has not spoken, I'm going to jump out of queue. I know Sumedha has her hand up, but Ratnesh, you want to jump in?
I just wanted to say, like, we must have a definition of proof also. Like many things can be so which is not true can be proved true. It can be proved that it is correct, but may not be correct. Like many things which in past where may have been proved that is correct, but now with advancement of science, we can see that well, this is not correct. So proof is also something we have to look at.
So good, and we'll see. In fact, in the not this coming segment, but the segment after this has to do with issues of really, what does scientific progress mean? What does proof in the sciences amount to? So there have been some answers given to these questions, but these are philosophical issues which continue to be contested. Okay, so before giving it to Sumedha, just to kind of, because there's been a lot of discussion, just to pull the threads together, what's the main take home from this this discussion? In a way, it's central to the point of the course. Is what we are interested in critical thinking is either finding good justifying reasons or evaluating, assessing whether the justifying reasons offered in favor of certain propositions are actually correct. Is the fact, if you take the Nazi propaganda case, if the conclusion that the Nazis are arguing for is that the Jewish people need to be exterminated for the killed for the sake of the German people, well, that's a proposition one can question and ask, what is the justifying reason that is being offered, and is the justifying reason actually correct? Does it in fact justify the belief in question? That's the kind of thing that in this domain, in the political domain, one could look at. In the scientific domain, it might be that somebody is offering, let's say, a proposed cure for COVID, and then there's a question. Look, well, is that cure actually, does this actually cure COVID? If I said that eating grass, if I said eating grass is a cure for COVID, I'm offering that up as a proposition, and you might question that. Look, what reasons do you have? What is the justification for?
फिर ये बता कि गोबर से ना लो, cow dung, use cow dung and your COVID will cure.
So again, the thought is, look, that's an empirical question. It may be true or it may be false, and the point of doing critical thinking is to investigate, is that kind of thing, is it true or is it false? Okay, Sumedha, I'll let you have the last word, and then we'll close the class.
Okay, sir. Like this is more of like a last comment only. What I wanted to ask a bit is ki, like God exists, and isn't God exist as bad of a statement as God does not exist? Because like we don't have a reason to believe God exists, but we don't have a proof to believe God does not exist either. Like absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, like as quote to quote. I don't know who said this, but isn't that equally bad proposition?
Good. I'm glad that you guys are really nailing it on the philosophy side of things in today's class. So I'm going to punt these to next week, because the discussions for tutorial next week are actually exactly on these issues. And if there's sufficient interest, then I might just do more of this. But yeah, so this is all by way of preview. Okay, Aditya, I can't call on you because we are well out of time. But thanks, and I'll see some of you tomorrow and others on Thursday. Yep.
Thank you, sir.
See you. Bye-bye. And thanks for your questions.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, can you please for optional additional readings?